How do we know the EU are not serious about climate change? How do we know? Because they only want the poor to pay. Have you noticed the wealthy are getting much wealthier through financing all the debt required to tackle climate change, and the poor are copying the debt and the hardship? And that is why you know you cannot trust the EU or any of the elite celebrities or wherever they are in politics when it comes to climate change, regardless the climate is changing. The climate is definitely changing, but it's not human induced. And they want to blame human, and they want to make you feel guilty and want to divide and destroy society. Because the climate change that is happening. And the best thing to do is take your cue from the Chinese. I love the Chinese people. I've got the greatest deal of respect for the Chinese people. The highest IQ in the world is in China. It's amongst the Chinese people next to the Jews. So let's take it. The smartest people must know what they're doing. What are they doing? Are they reducing the amount of coal-fired power stations they're building? No, they're not. They're increasing them all the way out to 2030 because they know they need all the power they can get to drive the ideological evolution and revolution they need to tackle the ongoing problems that the ongoing drought will cause due to the ice age that is imminent at some time in the near future. Now, how do we know when ice age is imminent? All right, they say it's global warming, but there's no evidence of global warming. Actual fact checks on evidence about temperatures show there's no actual evidence. Of course, there's more aridity in places like Australia and South Africa, and that is because there is less humidity. Less humidity means less dew point, less precipitation, and there's a reason for that. And that's the clue. That is the clue that the Earth is not warming. The sun, because of the lack of cloud cover, the radiation from the sun is drying out the soils and the plants and the organic life within Australia and South Africa, and it's drying up the water. It's the radiation from the sun and maybe the winds as well. If the globe was warming, as they say, the sun can be hotter, but the globe might not be as warming, and two things are totally different. If the globe was warming and the seas were warming, like they say, there would be more humidity, more clouds, or more precipitation in places like Australia. But there are less proves the precursor to an ice age is a drought. It's always a drought. And we can go back hundreds of thousands of years because there's been many ice ages, and they've always been precluded. An ice age means there's a drought because the moisture is taken up by the ice. Where's the ice gathering? The ice is gathering in the Antarctica. Regardless, they say, oh, there's more ice going from the Antarctica into the sea. Yes, there is. The reason of that is, of course, is because there are much greater each year in the Antarctica. At a rough estimate, about 100 million tons of humidity is transported from the equator, from the tropics, if you like, on the equatorial conveyor down to Antarctica, and it's deposited as snow upon the Antarctica. So, and that actually is a massive amount of extra moisture taken away from the systems, added to the Antarctica. So the Antarctica itself is an ice age because it's so massive. People don't realize how big the Antarctica is. It's such a massive amount of ice being piled upon there. It's taking ice out of the seas and out of the land. And that's where it's taking water out of the land, in other words, is being deposited on the Antarctica, and that's why there's a shortfall of water or humidity to allow precipitation into places like Australia and South Africa in particular. Now, the reason Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego in South America has not the same disadvantage, I'm not fully up to date in Patagonia, is because they've got a high Alps there, a very high mountains and that, and it catches the water in the clouds, and that allows those places to have a relatively greater amount of moisture fall onto those places. If Australia had high mountains, for instance, a very high mountain, 20,000 foot mountains, it would have a bit more rainfall because that catches the moisture in the upper atmosphere, in that sort of level of atmosphere. The fact is, because the Antarctic is spreading an amount of massive, each year, 100 million tons of moisture, water, is collected on the Antarctica. Wherever is happening in the Arctic, and whether you can believe any of that or not, is something that you ought to take with a pinch of salt, because nothing the elites say is remotely honest, because if they're remotely caring anything at all about climate change and the effects it's having, then they will be submitting 20% of their income and wealth towards dealing with this problem and distributing the money they have, that the trillions that the Rothschilds and all of the elite in the EU and the massive amount of money they have at their disposal, they would then distribute it amongst the poor people to make sure they weren't suffering through any sort of changes that had to be made to tackle this climate change. So because the EU is full of extremely wealthy elite and privilege, and so are most of the other people pushing this climate change agenda, and they're not contributing 1 cent. The only thing they contribute is words. They only contribute words. Words are meaningless unless they are backed up by actual input, by contributing a significant amount of your own wealth towards a cause you really believe in. Now, if they only want the poor to contribute, then it's obviously wealthy people or multi-millionaires and billionaires and trillionaires behind all this climate change propaganda are attacking the lower echelons of society, the poorer, because I see them as a nuisance, because it's a corporate system is soulless and mindless and heartless. They don't only care about profits, not humanity. And they must be aware, as other people are, who really understand how this planet works, that there's an ice age coming, and it could decimate people because of the drought it's causing. Decimate, and they want to make sure that they're safe, because that's biologically that what they're entitled to do biologically. They're taking advantage of their power and wealth to manipulate society according to how they want to manipulate them, to maneuver in a position of the poor so they can get rid of them and destroy them, so they don't need to employ them, especially with AI coming along at the same time, eliminating the need for workers. In other words, they've not put one thought into evolving the system, only into ripping the system off for their own private benefit. And that's all this is all about. Because it's worth repeating, if these elite and these celebrities give a damn about climate change, they will start contributing enormous amount of their own wealth, which is trillions and trillions. They've got trillions and trillions of dollars in private banks in the Cayman Islands and all sorts of other places. They've got trillions and trillions of dollars. They've been fleecing off through real estate inflation for the last 30 years or so, through real estate inflation alone, all the debt that's caused for society. They fleece society off with that and put this money in deposits for a rainy day, if it ever rains again. But they can make sure that they're ultimately secure while they decimate the living standards of the poor and make it harder. Like in Australia, they want the people to work, the Liberals and the Labour, they want the people to work till they die, rather than pay them a pension. This is how soulless this system is, the corporate system, what runs the world is. And so climate change, yes, it's changing, but it's not because of man-made climate change. It's because of the Antarctica effect, cooling down the southern oceans, causing a drought. And that drought's going to spread upwards around the lower parts of the world, and it may cause, and because of the effect of the pressure of the Antarctic into the Earth itself, is causing heat to bubble into the oceans. That's causing more moisture into the northern hemisphere in certain places, causing those floods, you see. So they see it, but it looks like, oh, and until you actually totally study the biosphere itself, the Earth and how it works itself, and spend a lot of time spending that, it takes years and takes a lot of time to study that, you might not quite know what's going on. So you may tend to believe people who have only got one agenda: destroy the poor people of the earth, enrich themselves and make sure they survive, and bugger everyone else and stuff everyone else. And that's what's going on in here with this climate change. Climate change is changing. Droughts are caused by the cooling of the oceans. If the oceans were warmer, if the globe was getting warmer, and the oceans were generally getting warmer, then there would be no drought in Australia or drought in South Africa. That's so simple. It's such a simple thing to understand. And because the first thing you do, look at what the Chinese are doing. They're dealing with ideology, and they're really getting on with dealing with ideology. If they're the wisest people on earth, as far as I know, I would be following what they're doing, not what the EU or any corporate system outside China is suggesting you should do. No, they're advocating not communism or anything. I'm just saying, if the most intelligent people on earth are doing something, you ought to know and ask yourself, why are they doing it? Why are the Chinese the oldest civilization, continuous civilization on earth for 5,000 years, is now going along and doing its own thing in regard to its own survival if climate change is a problem? How is it dealing with it? That's the question humanity ought to ask, not what the EU says or any other person says in the West. The West is corrupt, and it's just proven it beyond any doubt.